Chris Mackowski of Emerging Civil War. I'm standing alongside Terry Road outside of Jackson, Mississippi, downtown, kind of right in that area right there. This is where on the 14th of April, William T. Sherman's advancing from in front of me off in that direction, and he suddenly finds some opposition down at the bottom of this hill. He comes toward Jackson mostly undetected. Confederates instead paying attention to the advance of James McPherson's corps coming from the direction of Clinton. They had actually misidentified that as Sherman, and so they're paying attention, and Sherman basically, although he's got some cavalry skirmishers and screeners sort of delaying his advance, he kind of marches right up here, and right along this ridge line where I'm at, he first begins to deploy because the mounted Kentucky infantry comes up to contest him, rushed to this side of the battlefield with a couple pieces of artillery once Joe Johnson discovers that there are actually Federals advancing from this direction. Johnson's not actually paying too much attention to the approaching Federals because he's busy trying to evacuate the city, and instead he has put John Gregg in charge. Gregg, part of that nasty fight down at Raymond just a couple days earlier. He's exhausted. His men are confused, but they put up a pretty stout resistance here at Jackson and allowed Johnston to pull out. So when Gregg shifts his reinforcements down to the bottom of the hill here, we'll take a look at that in just a second. Not a lot to look at. Most of the Jackson Civil War sites have been erased. We'll talk about that more in just a second. But here it's along this crest. There's a little Carmelite monastery here today where Sherman first deploys. He's going to put Mower on one side of the road and Matthews on the other, and those two brigades are going to push forward under Tuttle's direction and try to flush the Confederates out, who are going to put up a pretty stout resistance, but they do it on this side of Lynch Creek, which is down at that low ground. So let's go down there and take a quick look. Now, let me take a second to get us oriented. We were up that rise on this side, same side of the road. As I mentioned, there's not a whole lot left here in Jackson. Ironically, we've got the Battlefield Shopping Center. This is not Battlefield Park, but Battlefield Parking Lot. And then there's actually nothing in the shopping center anymore. Now, if we skip down the road just a little bit further, we're going to come to Battlefield Park in Jackson. This says right here, it commemorates action that took place here not only in May but also in July of 1863. There are some earthworks that are through here, as well as a couple artillery pieces, one there and one right here. They are Spanish-American War vintage. Let me walk over here just a second so you can take a look, because they're pretty cool and they're pretty rare. But as far as commemorating Civil War stuff, maybe not quite so effective. The earthworks that are here are actually constructed during the July siege, not during the May battle. As Jim Woodrick points out, aside from those things, the United Daughters of the Confederacy got everything right when they marked the property. But aside from this, and on the campus of the medical center on the north side of town, there are some earthworks that were constructed by Park's 9th Corps during the siege in July. Other than that, there really isn't anything that exists in the city as far as battlefield remnants. Most of it's been developed, and the battlefield has been erased. All right, I'll be honest, I shot this out of sequence. I don't have a good transition here, so we're just going to edit ourselves back to the Battlefield Shopping Center parking lot and talk about the May 14th battle. Confederates are posted right down along this area, and they're trying to defend against this side of Lynch Creek, which runs just over there. Part of the problem, though, is that as Sherman's men begin their advance down this direction, the Confederates, there's only about 1,000 of them. They're outnumbered literally 20 to 1, and so they pull back, and then they retreat back across Lynch Creek. But when they do, they don't burn the bridge. And as a result, Sherman's men are able to get down here, and they use that bridge to get across. Now, one reason that the bridge probably doesn't burn is because it's pouring rain, torrential downpours. And as a result, Lynch Creek is super swollen. So Sherman's men can't get across the creek. It's impassable. So that bridge is the one way they can get across. And so it's a huge error for the Confederates to allow that bridge to stand. But it might be that the bridge was just too wet to burn because of the rain. So anyway, Sherman's men file across. It does bottleneck them, and they end up, basically there's a choke point there. Confederates harass them, but they're able to get across. As I mentioned, Mower on one side of the road, Matthews on the other, and they end up switching sides of the road as they go across, and then they deploy. Buckland comes up as a reserve and comes in, find themselves facing some artillery off in that direction from the quote-unquote defenses of Jackson, which are pretty weak at this point. There are earthworks encircling the city that have been put up ahead of the battle by not only enslaved people, but also free whites. Everyone pitching in the days leading up to this battle to try to defend the city, but it's feeble. Confederates are able to make some sort of defense there, and it looks more intimidating than it really is. So Sherman's going to try to find a way around it. Pardon the pause. Pickup truck with loud exhaust went by him, standing still next to Terry Road. Anyway, the Confederate works look pretty intimidating, so Sherman's going to try to find a way around them rather than making a direct assault. He's going to send the 95th Ohio on a reconnaissance off in that direction to see if he can find the end of the works. They're going to actually find a way through where the railroad goes and kind of go up and around, and they're going to actually run into an enslaved man who says, "There's nobody here," and it turns out there's nobody there. The Confederates have started to pull back, and so Sherman's men is going to send Frederick Steele's division up into that gap. Meanwhile, he's going to have a frontal assault from Buckland and Matthews and Tuttle, and they're going to end up taking the last few dozen Confederate defenders. But by this point, Gregg has pulled most of the defenders out of the city. Johnson has signaled that he's got most of the supplies in the army pulled out, and so the rear guard is then going to fall back. Even as this action happens here, simultaneous action happens on the northwest corner of the city. As McPherson makes his advance from Clinton. In that area today, the Jackson Zoo. I'm not going to take us up there. I was there the other day, and it is not a safe part of town, quite frankly. Even the roads are more potholed than paved, made out of some weird rock composite. It was just crazy. Nothing exists up there anymore anyway, so nothing really to see. But McPherson actually runs into a bit more resistance there than Sherman does here. He pushes through, and as he's coming in from the northwest, Sherman here is coming in from the southwest. Both converge on downtown as Johnson slips away to the north, heading off toward Canton. And so that is the Battle of Jackson. Lasts just a couple hours, most of it in a spectacular rainstorm, and then a thunderstorm comes through. But it's a key victory for Grant because now he's going to knock out Jackson as a communications, transportation, and manufacturing hub. And from here, they're going to head toward the west at a date at Champion Hill with John Pemberton, who at this point is sort of wandering around like, "Oh, where's Grant? I can't find him." And they're going to bump into each other quite accidentally at Champion Hill just 2 days later on May 16th. Here in Jackson, Mississippi, I am Chris Mackowski for Emerging Civil War, and we'll see you online and on what there is for a battlefield.